Hello, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. What next for Eddie Jones now that he is no longer the England coach? He's going to be taking charge of the Barbarians next year at Twickenham. That will be his return to Twickenham. But looking beyond that, looking further afield, what could be the next big job for Eddie Jones? He is not a man in short supply, and maybe we could see him coaching against England in some capacity at the World Cup in France next year. It'd be quite extraordinary. Remember, if you are new here, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and also drop a comment down below. What do you think about Eddie Jones? Where could you see him, whether it be Australia, NRL, possibly USA? I'm going to get into all of those options in this video. All right, let's get into it. So a date for your diary, possibly, is the 28th of May. The Barbarians taking on a World 15, and Eddie Jones is going to be the coach of the Barbarians, and the match is happening at Twickenham. So already, news-wise and in terms of the news cycle, that's possibly a date for your diary that you might want to see, because Eddie Jones very revealingly in the press release for that said, "I'm more motivated than ever to put on a show," which I think we can all agree is probably in regards to his departure last week from the England head coaching job, and a job which he felt he hadn't quite finished. He wanted to take them through to the World Cup in France next year. He's not going to be able to do that. But what next for Eddie Jones? Because despite how a lot of England fans will feel towards him, despite how disappointed they will be in both the results and the performance of the team over the last, probably 3 years or so since the 2019 World Cup final, his coaching pedigree, in my opinion, is still undeniable. I think you will find some fans that think he's a bit too old school and that his time has been and gone. I don't agree with that. I think Eddie Jones still has an awful lot to offer in the coaching department. And the reason that I can do a video on this, the reason that this is even a talking point, is because apparently in his severance package with the RFU, or in his contract with the RFU, there was not a non-compete clause. There was no clause in that contract that said Eddie Jones couldn't go and start coaching another side. He couldn't start coaching a rival, which opens a whole number of possibilities for where Eddie Jones could next go. And what we know about him as well is he loves coaching. Genuinely, whatever you think of Eddie Jones, there are plenty of stories when he was England coach of him going into the community game, offering up his time for free just because he genuinely loves coaching. We will see him back. And as I say, I think he still has the caliber to be sought after by a lot of high-profile jobs. Let's get into some of those. I think he's still a very, very good coach. Number one, the first one, I think the most intriguing one, is Australia. He's been very heavily linked with a return to Australia. Of course, he was the head coach there and took them to the 2003 World Cup final where they lost to England. And then he's actually admitted since that he got so obsessed with trying to correct that wrong and win the World Cup in 2007, he lost sight of the goal, and actually he got fired from that job midway through that World Cup cycle. And he admitted later that he probably should have left after 2003. I wonder if he'll feel the same about the England job, but that's by the by. But apparently the Rugby Australia chair, Hamish McLennan, he is reportedly keen on bringing him back to Australia. This wouldn't be a replacement for Dave Rennie, so that's what I meant in the intro when I said in whatever capacity it might be, as some sort of advisor, just part of the coaching team. Could Eddie Jones return to Australia? I believe I'm correct in saying that he's still got family in Australia. Obviously, he's been overseas a long time with the England job, whether he wants to be closer to his homeland, possibly. That could be a reason that he might want to go back there. But also, if you think about the knowledge he will have of that English system. And okay, someone new is going to come in, looks likely to be Steve Borthwick. The systems will change, some of the personnel will change as well. But Eddie Jones has been embedded in the English system for so long, for the last 7 years, that I think he would be a threat to England, particularly if he was to take up a position at a team like the Wallabies. The Wallabies is quite a good example because on paper, at this moment in time, they're not a huge threat to England. England have a pretty good recent record over them. The Wallabies haven't necessarily pulled up any trees. They've been very, very inconsistent. They've shown us some brilliant stuff like the comeback against Wales at the end of the autumn, but they've also shown us a lot of inconsistency like the defeat to Italy in the autumn as well. But Eddie Jones is the coach and someone who can come in, he can have an immediate impact, I think. He can have an uplift. Could Australia be the sort of side that he could have a really big impact on? And particularly when you consider the fact that if you look at the seedings for the World Cup, if you look at the pools for the World Cup, if there are no upsets, there's a good chance England could be meeting Australia, potentially in a quarterfinal or something like that. So therefore, I could understand why Rugby Australia are pursuing that as an option, and I think it's ridiculous from the RFU to not have a non-compete clause in there. I'm not an expert on these sort of situations, contractors negotiations at that level, but I would have just thought that surely they should have had some sort of non-compete clause in there. But there we go. Australia, what do you reckon? Let me know in the comments down below. Could he come back, be part of that coaching setup, an advisor or whatever it might be for the 2023 World Cup in France? I don't know, from a narrative point of view, from a hype point of view, England-Australia in a World Cup quarter-final with Eddie Jones on the Australian coaching staff it gets me excited anyway. You can imagine some of the verbal bombs that he'll be chucking towards the England camp and towards the RFU in particular if that fixture was to take place. So just from that point of view, from the drama, I quite like the idea of it. The other thing to throw in here is the NRL, Rugby League in Australia. Eddie Jones has never tried to hide the fact that he would be very interested one day in exploring that coaching opportunity. We see a lot of coaches, don't we, come from rugby league into rugby union. I believe I'm correct in saying you don't see quite as many go from union into league. I think I'm correct. People can tell me I'm wrong in the comments. So I think that would be quite an interesting transition. I don't know too much more about that, whether that's likely to happen or not, but I think it's just something worth bearing in mind. Eddie Jones is a person who, as a coach, likes to challenge himself. He's always wants to grow and explore new opportunities. We've seen that in what he did with Japan. We've seen it with some of the consultancy work he's taken up. He's coached all around the world. So NRL, slightly different type of game. Awful lot to learn from that. I can see why Eddie Jones would go there. That's certainly one to keep an eye on. And then the third and final one I want to mention is the USA. And this is actually a very, very interesting one because the USA are in a intriguing point of view. They are the golden nugget the World Rugby in an ideal world would like to crack, as a lot of sports and cultural things would like to do, is crack America, and there's huge potential there. The USA are the hosts of the 2031 World Cup, but their men's side have failed to qualify for France next year, which, as brilliant as it is for Portugal, and I'm really excited for Portugal, I'm going to go to the Wales-Portugal game, in fact, in Nice in the World Cup. I've already got my tickets for that one. It's terrible news for USA and for rugby in the USA to have a home World Cup on the horizon but not be qualifying for the next edition in France. So could Eddie Jones be someone they could bring in who can help develop the game in the country and can build them towards that home World Cup? He did a very similar job with Japan, and we know how good a job he did with the Japanese team, leading them to that victory over South Africa in Brighton, probably the most famous rugby union result in the history of the sport. Could he do something similar with the United States of America? I think from that point of view, in terms of his track record, it makes sense as to why that might work. Could he help grow the game more wider? There's all sorts of complicated reasons for why that is a difficult thing to do. And in fact, I would encourage you all to go back and listen to, there was a special podcast on this, the Ruck podcast by the Times and the Sunday Times last year. Can't remember the exact date. In fact, not last year, last season. It was this year, 2022. But a USA special, essentially, speaking to people in the college game, in the professional game, in the union, all sorts of different people about how you need to grow the game in America. It's not easy, but obviously there is a huge amount of potential there. But could Eddie Jones be someone to come in and help try and grow it? Focusing mainly on the national team and improving them enough to be able to make an impact at a home World Cup, but maybe further afield as well in terms of the coaching and improving it and that sort of thing. Could the USA afford him is an interesting question to ask as well. This is a union that went bankrupt 2 years ago, but I'd imagine if Eddie Jones does get employed by the USA Rugby, I would have thought maybe there might be the possibility of World Rugby helping them out financially with that, because World Rugby want the USA to be a success. They want them to have a successful World Cup on American soil, so maybe they might be able to help in some capacity there. I don't know, but that was just kind of my thoughts overall on that. But the big question is, could he repeat what he did with Japan? Could he do that with America? I think that's really intriguing personally. I'd be quite interested to see how he got on there. Longer term project as well, taking them up to 2031, would have to be like an 8-year contract or something. But look, we'll wait and see. Those are some of the possibilities available to Eddie Jones. As I said in the intro, I think he's still a very, very good coach, an incredible rugby brain, someone that wants to continue to improve and to learn and build on his skill set. So what could we see him doing in the future other than the Barbarians game on the 28th of May. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Remember to subscribe to the channel as well. Would really appreciate that. And give the thumbs up on the video. All right, I'll see you in the next one.